will be here as quick as he finishes that. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Sheevy, will you give us the Pledge of Allegiance?
All right. Go ahead. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and then Madam Clerk, we roll call, please.
Mr. Caroselli?
Here.
Mr. Dillard?
Here.
Mr. Lawson?
Here.
Mr. Lucy? Mr. Murdoch? Mayor Sheevy?
Here.
Mr. Wood? Mr. Wowo? Oh, Mr. Sturbins.
All right. Public comment. I don't have any public comment cards. Anyone wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none. All right. We'll pull it back to the table. Can I get approval for the agenda?
Motion.
Motion for Mayor Sheevy, second by Mr. Wowo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes or additions, corrections? Lee, motion. Second by Mr. Sturbins. Drew a blank there for a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Just in time for Mr. Lucy to walk in the door. We're on number E.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. All right. So we're on item E, presentation. So this morning we are joined by the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. Mrs. Marilee Morant, good morning. Hi, good morning. Yeah, I just had a phone call with the senator this morning.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for providing the airport with this opportunity to give you an annual update. This morning, I usually focus on air service, but this morning we're going to be talking also about the master plan for the Reno Tahoe International Airport. So this is Dan Bartholomew, who is our Vice President of Engineering, Planning, and Environmental Management. So he will be taking some of the slides this morning. We'd like to start out by talking about the people that you have appointed to our board. So Carol Chaplin, who is the RSCVA representative on the Board of Trustees, is here this morning. And of course, Nat Caroselli, who is the airport's appointee to the board, is on your board. So, and Mr. Caroselli and Ms. Chaplin have been very involved, certainly with air service, as has Rick Murdoch, who is absent today. And Bob Lucy has also joined us on many occasions for air service development opportunities. I like to start out by saying thank you, because our partnership with the RSCVA has never been better than it is right now. I just came from a presentation this morning to a conference that the RSCVA is pitching for 2026, the International City and County Managers Association. And this is the type of thing that we are at the table with RSCVA when you're trying to bring large groups to the city. And this partnership, it takes many forms, but I just want to say that RSCVA helps us because they partner with us on airline headquarters meetings. We have two coming up, one with Sun Country Airlines, which we, as an airline, we very much want to bring to Reno, and with Delta Airlines. But this is something we do on a regular basis, and RSCVA has really developed relationships with our airline partners. We also make a big attempt, because part of really telling our story and trying to bring airlines and increase air service to our destination is bringing our airline representatives and airline executives here to the area. And RSCVA really has helped us tremendously with that. Mayor Sheevy has also helped us so much, and Bob Lucy with hosting those airline executives once they're here to really again show them about the vibrancy of our community. I think one of the areas that's really a new area for us to partner with RSCVA, and thanks to Jennifer Cunningham, is really partnering to get that research data that we so much need to really convince the airlines to serve Reno Tahoe International Airport. And particularly, it's been really important to have that data from RSCVA, and one of our major quests is to get service to Vancouver. Again, we are at the table and helping to bring citywide conventions, Interbike and Safari Club. We very much were a partner of those events to bring them here to the city. And one of the things that we're partnering with RSCVA is really to get additional flights during the periods that we have these large group movements coming to our city. We again work with RSCVA on sales missions and again trying to increase those seats for citywide events. We collaborate with RSCVA on fam trips and again on really the marketing and the collaboration that goes along with supporting the markets that RSCVA needs and also those that are for Reno Tahoe International Airport. We operate 2 airports, both Reno Tahoe International and Reno Stat. I always like to say we're financially self-sufficient. We don't take any local tax dollars. We operate a small city out at Reno Tahoe International. I think one of the things that people don't think about when they think about our airports is that we are an economic generator of over $2 billion a year, over 2,500 jobs. And we have an 8-year-old economic impact study, which we're updating in the next couple of months. And I can say that I think that this contribution to the local economy will be much bigger than it was in the past. We're very proud of our route map, and again, we've been able to add flights really with the help of RSCVA. And again, you know, having that service to New York City on JetBlue, that was a major win for the airport. Restoring international service to Reno Tahoe International with a flight 3 times a week to Guadalajara was ever so important. And also bringing in 3 new airlines. We've had Volaris, JetBlue, and last November, we got Frontier Airlines. And most recently, Frontier added service to Austin. So here are a couple of the destinations, certainly that we've added in recent years and the airlines. And again, we could not do this without the help of RSCVA. Last year was a phenomenal year for Reno Tahoe International. We hit a 4 million mark. We had not done that in many years. We had a 10% growth in passengers. And we actually now are on our 33rd month, if we look at February statistics, our 33rd month of consecutive growth. I think what you're interested in and what RSCVA, we always have conversations with the groups that are coming, that you're courting and are coming here, are already booked for the area, is what's going to be happening with our seat capacity? Our seat capacity has grown and we expect it to continue to grow, as you can see in this graph. So I think that is good news. If we look at the seats growing in and out of our market, that's an important measurement certainly for RSCVA and the ability to host conventions here. Our market focus is certainly the Pacific Northwest, getting additional capacity in that market other than Alaska Airlines. Chicago, we want to really move that to daily year-round service to Midway. Atlanta is a seasonal flight on Delta Airlines. We like to see that daily. Minneapolis, that's one of the things when we go talk to Sun Country here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be pitching certainly to get Minneapolis service. And additional service certainly to Texas, which is an important market. We've grown the Southern California market. Unfortunately, one of the markets that we had added in Southern California was Orange County. We weren't able to keep that flight more than a year because that's a slot-constrained airport, and it was more profitable for Alaska Airlines to use the slot for Portland service. The next time that there are another slots open in Orange County will be 2020. But again, we find that that's an important market for us to continue to grow Southern California. Our new focus markets in terms of domestic markets, one that I just heard about for the ICMA group, that is Washington, D.C. We continue to work on the opportunities for Washington, D.C., both United Airlines and Southwest Airlines. That's really one of our top unserved market and very important market. Boston, I think as we move down the road, JetBlue has been very successful at Reno Tahoe International, and the next city that they would add would be Boston. And right now, the service on JetBlue to New York is many times a year, it's daily, but we also have parts of the year that's only 4 times a week. They want to make sure that that flight is daily to JFK before Boston would be added. So that's an important route for us to add in the years ahead. Philadelphia, And again, looking at regional short-haul markets that we would like to add in some of the feeder cities, certainly into Reno Tahoe International. Elko used to be served from Reno Tahoe International, and that community does not have service to Reno. And if you want to get to Elko and to go to Cowboy Poetry, you have to go to Salt Lake City and backtrack, or you drive, a long drive. So that's really a focus is in the future to get Elko service back. International, we've had many challenges with U.S. Customs and Border Protection. We finally have resolved some of those thanks to our congressional delegation in 2016 that passed legislation that made it that we would have the ability to actually hire a customs officer. We have 2 customs officers and a port director. We actually have a new officer finally coming in July this year. So right now we will be able to provide better processing times for our 3 times a week flight to certainly Guadalajara. We continue to look at focus areas of Canada, Mexico, and Central America, but again, potential service to Europe on a seasonal basis in the winter. Many of you may recall a couple years ago, we had Thomas Cook lined up to serve London Gatwick during the winter months, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection denied the landing rights for that flight because of the lack of customs staffing. Now we have mechanisms really that we could potentially look at that in the future, because we have mechanisms now in place to pay for staffing. Important to talk about, I think, as we talk about what we do on air service as a community engagement. We're very active out in the community talking about how we do air service development. And I think an important part of what we do in terms of community engagement, and certainly the partnership with the RSCVA, is the Regional Air Service Corporation. And we're very thankful for the $250,000 that you contribute to the Regional Air Service Corporation. Because when we go into airlines and we meet with airlines, we're competing with 400 other airports. But we always say we have a secret weapon, that we have the Regional Air Service Corporation in our community, so that we are able to have risk mitigation agreements with airlines. We're able to have money on the table really to support new routes that serve Reno Tahoe International, or routes that are not healthy and need a little bit of marketing help to make them really profitable for the airline. We're so appreciative of the Regional Air Service Corporation and RSCVA's part in that organization, but also of the fact that you've set aside money to help with air service development and air service marketing. We're out there continuously doing Air Service 101 sessions with properties, again, to grow that community partnership, because again, that is what we when we go out and talk to the airlines, it's very, very important that they know that there's a community, there's an organization like the RSCVA to really help market and make sure that that flight stays in our community. One of the things that we do and has become very popular is that we have a weekly newsletter that tells you about all the airfare deals. And we send that out every Thursday. But we search really on all the airlines, and we have a pretty extensive list of people now that we send that Reno Explorer out to. Back to the Regional Air Service Corporation. We're growing that partnership, and I think that one of the things that we heard about the RASC in recent years is tourism has been at the table. We've actually had a former, something that was called the Regional Marketing Committee that was been in place since 2001. The Regional Air Service Corporation became incorporated to really allow us to get JetBlue into this community and to sign an agreement with JetBlue. We've really grown beyond just tourism being at the table, and now, as you see on this list, we have businesses that have joined, we have the City of Reno that's joined, and that really has made this much more robust and a much more forceful organization in our partnership with trying to bring airline service and keep airline service here. So again, some of the things that we've done recently, I know Phil DeLone here is always concerned, how many seats are you going to have for Safari Club? And so every meeting that we have with the airlines, whether we're at an airline speed dating conference or we're at a headquarters meeting, and this is talking about, okay, what additional lift can you bring for Safari or Interbike or any of the conferences that there might be here in Reno in the future? So here is just a list of meetings that we continuously have. I think, again, the upcoming airline meetings that we're having, we'll have a partner here from RSCVA to, again, speak to the need to have additional flights and flex flights available, additional capacity during these important large events that RSCVA has been successful bringing to our community. We have an exciting program. We have a great opportunity to really shape our future. We're doing a 20-year master plan. The Board of Trustees for the Airport Authority will be adopting that plan in June. And we just want to give you, again, some information on the alternatives that have been adopted by the board and how we're going to go forward really with a master plan. So I'm going to again turn this over to Dan Bartholomew.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. Good morning. I'm Dan Bartholomew. I'm the Vice President of Planning, Engineering, and Environmental Management for the Airport Authority. And I'm the project manager for the master plan that is taking place right now. We're in what I'd like to say, we're sliding into home a little bit on the master plan. As Mayor Lee mentioned, it'll be going to our Board of Trustees in June for the board meeting for approval, and then it'll be sent off to the FAA for their approval and acceptance. One of the basis of a master plan, though, is always the enplanement forecast. And enplanements are a little different. You might think total passenger counts. FAA looks at things from an enplanement standpoint. You have deplanements, people getting off plane. FAA looks at enplanements, people getting on planes. It looks like in our forecast, there's 3 different forecasts that we ran. These are very robust forecasts. We use something called a Monte Carlo simulation, which is probably one of the more robust forecasts out there. And it's showing about 2.9 million enplanements. So about 6 million passengers within our 20-year master plan cycle here. But we also run a high and a low forecast so we can capture outliers on either side, just in case. Something happens, another recession, another 9/11, whatever happens there may lower our forecast, but we get an exceptional boom in our economy or tourism industry, it may give us a higher forecast. We want to be prepared for both. And you'll notice as they go out in time, those separate. That's typically a forecast cone of uncertainty. You see those in hurricane forecasts, things like that, as the time frame goes out. That's what we have in our forecast here. We're looking at our concourses. That's one of the more important things. We have aging concourses. Our concourses are currently about 40 years old, so if you extrapolate that out to the master plan horizon, we're looking at 60-year-old concourses. That's very old for an airport. So we're also looking at expanding those concourses to be a little more usable and actually be applicable to the forecast we're showing. So we're looking at expanding from our current 24 gates up to possibly 27 or more gates. We'll increase the gate count, but also the whole room capacity. We're going to separate the gates out to get more airplanes between the gates. As Mayor Lee mentioned, the custom and border protection, we're hoping to integrate that into one of our concourses so we don't have to hard stand an aircraft and have people get out in the rain and the heat. They'll all be taken care of through a boarding bridge, but also increase the size to handle from what we have now, 200 passengers per hour to 400 passengers per hour. And then with anything to diversify our revenue opportunities, we're going to add some space for that. And then future flexibility. We want to make sure, based on that forecast, if things change, we get larger aircraft, we get more aircraft, less aircraft, we have some flexibility built into that design. So this is basically, I'll just kind of take you through what we're looking at here. So we'll be looking at our 2 concourses, B and C, and then possibly expanding out a D concourse to the north there. But that would require the removal or the move of our air cargo area to the southwest part of our airport. So first we'd be looking at B, then a Customs Border Patrol protection, possibly some additional administrative offices for the airport. We're pretty tight right now as far as administrative offices going. Then looking at going out to Concourse B, and then if need be, we'd come back out and build Concourse C with the impetus that we'd have to move our cargo to the southwest quadrant. We'd also possibly expand our baggage area, and we'd also add a belly cargo. This is the cargo that goes in the bottom of aircraft like Southwest and Alaska. That's becoming more and more popular. We'd be looking at the terminal building itself. If you've been in there, and when you've been in there, you've noticed it's a little tight with the ticketing desk, things like that. We're going to be expanding that and widening that. We're going to be increasing the size of our security checkpoint due to some new equipment that's coming out from the Transportation Security Administration. Currently wouldn't fit in our existing TSA checkpoint area. As I mentioned, more administrative space, and then some revenue diversification opportunities within the concourse and the terminal itself. Land side, this is probably where we're really constrained right now. We're finding that our parking areas are filling up, not just on Thanksgiving, but they're filling up on some other times of the year as well. We have an immediate need for extra parking. Right now we have our rental cars are based on the first floor of our parking facility. We're looking at building what we call a CONRAC, or consolidated rental car facility, just to the north on the other side of our terminal loop road. That would house all the rental car facilities, allowing us to utilize our entire garage. And if we need more space, we will add on to that garage. So we're looking at that. To give you sort of an illustrative view of what that would look like, we'd start out with the parking garage and or the CONRAC, and that would give us more space to put more vehicles. So altogether, that's what it would look like. Okay. Now moving on to cargo, as I mentioned, cargo may end up moving to what we call our southwest quadrant. We have a large swath of land down there dedicated to that particular use. If we start to hit a point where we're running out of space, and we are getting to that point with cargo growth around here, with the fulfillment centers, things like that. So we're running out of space in that general area. So we may need to move things down to the southwest. In addition, if we got a fourth entrant into the market, whatever that happens to be, that would certainly push us down there. So this is where it would go. Due north of here is the Air National Guard base, and then north of that is our terminal. So we'd start out south, and this would accommodate our existing cargo use right now, plus a little extra. Okay? This would be added on if we came to the forecasted cargo that we feel we might need in the future within the 20 years. And this is what would happen if we needed a fourth entrant to come in there. All that space would be utilized in one fashion or another. General aviation, that's also an important aspect of our airport. So general aviation, pretty much what we're looking at there is making area for cargo expansion. So we have some west side general aviation, we've moved to the east side. We're really consolidating all of our general aviation on the east side. You're separating commercial service airlines, different types of aircraft, different types of uses from general aviation aircraft, which are your business jets, some of your military, although the Air National Guard would stay over on its current location, and then also your single engine, multi-engine piston aircraft. That would all be moved over to the east side of the aircraft, consolidated over there, and then we'd expand with the forecast any hangars, fixed operators, fueling facilities, things such as that as we move forward. So it looks like that. Most of this would be private development funded. So when we get into, there's one additional item we looked at the airport. We are in a unique situation at Reno, which isn't obvious to a lot of people, especially if you're not a pilot. We are high and we are hot in the summertime especially, okay? So we had to look at our runways. Runways and getting out of the valley is very difficult to do when you're in a high and hot environment. And I'll explain here why. So we had to look at, can we bring in larger aircraft? Can we bring in heavier aircraft? Can they get in and out? We found out they can get in, but can they get out? That's always a problem. If you get in, you do want to get out. But we also wanted to find out if we could get longer destinations. Longer destinations, you're carrying more fuel, hence you typically have a larger aircraft, and you have more weight because of that fuel and more passengers. Can you get out? So our longest runway at Reno Tahoe International is 11,001 foot. That 1 foot is incredibly important. Not sure where they came up with the 1 foot, but nonetheless, 11,001 foot. For any airport in the country, 11,000 foot runway would be incredibly generous, I'll put it that way. Here, not so much, because the higher you are, the hotter you are, the more runway you need to get out of the airport. Our other runways are 9,000 and 6,000 feet. A 9,000 foot runway is a typical U.S. airport runway length. But you'll notice that's one of our shorter parallels. We in certain crosswind conditions, we'll use our crosswind runway 725, which is 6,000 feet. We could land a commercial airliner on that, but taking off would be difficult to near impossible. So we, in airport planning engineering, we deal with something called density altitude. And those of us that are professional pilots have to add it into our calculations when we fly. Basically, what it says is altitude negatively impacts your aircraft performance, as well as heat. Okay? So the higher you up, the fewer air molecules going over your wings and through your engine, so it decreases engine performance, decreases lift. And as higher heats, those molecules expand even further apart, giving you even less lift and less performance. So density altitude is elevation plus temperature. So to put this into more of a realistic view here, this is Reno Tahoe International, or Reno in general. Professional pilots use the term international standard atmosphere. This is the middle line that you'll see there between the blue and the red. That is an airport at a certain temperature at sea level. You can see how many times, and that's where you get optimal aircraft performance at sea level. That's what aircraft are designed for, sea level operations. You can see the red is when we are less than optimal. Green means we're at least at optimal or less than optimal. Well, even in the wintertime here, we can be less than optimal, meaning we're going to have density altitude problems, which means we're going to have difficulty getting aircraft off the runway and out of the valley. So we had a look at that as far as the master plan went. Just to give you even a little further illustrative view of what it's like on our runways, this is me laying on the runway. Not really, this is a Google Earth shot of us looking to the north, and you can see that terrain that's sitting there. So runway length's one issue. Terrain is a completely different issue, and that's really our limiting factor here. So that's looking to the north, that's looking to the south, hills on both ends. The way aircraft are required to operate, commercial service aircraft, they're required to have something called a one engine and operative performance tactic, if you will. So if they're on departure, they're rolling out, but they're beyond the point where they can abort a takeoff. They need to be able to get, and they lose an engine, they need to get out of the valley and be able to get off that runway and safely either back here or to an alternate airport. So they're required to do that. That means they can climb less efficiently, if they can climb really much at all. So they need to be able to get off the runway and out of the valley. Well, this terrain makes that very difficult to do it, and it's very difficult to come up with procedures to allow that to happen. Currently at our airport, given the amount of fuel that an aircraft can carry at any given time, these are the ranges of where aircraft coming out of our airport typically can fly. So you can see our JFK destination, which is our furthest destination there. That plane can get beyond there. Okay, it can get out into the Atlantic Ocean there a little bit. But that's about it as far as the current aircraft that are flying at our airport, given our density altitude and our runway lengths. So what we did is we went back and we looked at other aircraft, and we looked at different temperatures, because the temperatures here swing wildly. I mean, if you live in Wisconsin, you can expect to be at minus 20 degrees for 4 months out of the year. It's pretty consistent. Here it's not that way. We can go from 20 degrees to 60 degrees on a January day fairly easily. Plane comes in when it's 40 degrees, but it's scheduled to go out in the afternoon and it's 60 degrees. All of a sudden it can't get out or has to drop passengers. And by drop, I mean leave them off the plane, not get them on and then drop them. Or leave fuel. So they can't get as far and they'll have to make a fuel stop someplace. So we ran some calculations on these. Everything that blacked out there were aircraft that don't typically serve or do not typically serve this market. An A350, a 787, and a 747, those are more your LAX, your JFKs, your long-haul international flight aircraft, but they don't typically operate out of this market because they're so large, they require a voluminous number of passengers, and then they go long distances. The other aircraft that are highlighted, if you will, or not blocked out, are the ones that typically serve our market, or this airport. But if you notice, by addressing the terrain issue that we have to meet the one engine operative issues and to lengthen our runway, you can see there's a very minimal, or even in some cases no benefit to how far these aircraft can get. 400 nautical miles, 500 nautical miles, that's just not very far. That's the distance from here to Vegas, basically. That's what we'd get out of an extension to a runway or removal of terrain. To put it a different way, from a destination standpoint, these are currently the ranges aircraft can get out of our airport given the existing density altitude and existing terrain issues. But again, you'll notice the types of aircraft that typically serve our airport can only get so far. They can get to Guadalajara, they can get to East Coast, Mexico, they can get to a little bit of Central America. In a colder climate, such as seasonal flight, such as the one from Thomas Cook, they can get to Western Europe. Even though it doesn't show here, we showed a typical summer average temperature. So that's why you're not seeing some of these pop up. So with a runway length and a terrain evaluation, that's what you get, and that's the only aircraft that actually gets an increase. That's it. So given the money, the time, the evaluation, the environmental impacts, things like that, that's where you'd get with an increase in, or a mitigation of terrain and an increase in runway length. So to conclude, we put some dollar amounts to this because this is where it really starts to hit home for us a little bit, and the community as well. A runway lengthening, if we did it, it's about $250 million. A lot of money, but not excessive. Well, terrain mitigation is a totally different story. And it's not the runway length, it's really the terrain. Aircraft, we found, can get off the runways fine, or they can get off the runway before they run out of runway, let's put it that way. However, if they lose an engine on departure, they cannot get around the terrain in most cases. Some airlines are able to develop some very interesting one-engine operative procedures to get them out. Other ones cannot do that. It all depends on the airline, the type of equipment they're flying, the chief pilot, a number of factors, the temperature that day, et cetera. So we're talking $250 million plus $3.2 billion to remove the minimum amount of terrain we need to make these procedures happen. A lot of money. And that would get us an additional 1,300 nautical miles for just one aircraft, an A350, which doesn't typically serve this market. It's a very large, fairly new aircraft. This money would not be eligible for federal grant funding. It is not a guarantee. You cannot use it to guarantee new air service. It has to be somebody that's already coming in here that for some reason has issues getting out. They also have to make 500 operations a year, something Volaris doesn't currently do. They do about half that. So we're talking a number of additional operations. Can't be market driven. It's not a build it, we can make it happen kind of thing. And it can be mitigated by possibly future higher performing aircraft. Aircraft are becoming incredibly more high performing than their predecessors as time goes through on an exponential rate. So we're hoping that will mitigate most of the problems. So bottom line is a longer runway and terrain mitigation just isn't viable. But we had to look into it to find out where can we really get to from this airport. What are the markets that we can really serve on a realistic basis? So lastly here, kind of address how we're doing these now. If you notice, JetBlue flies at night. There's a valid reason for that. They're just not, it's not just that that's when they have the plane available, or that's when people want to arrive in New York at 9 a.m. No, they do it because that's when they can get out of our airport on a consistent basis. Temperatures are cooler at night. They are guaranteed almost to be able to get out of our airport fully loaded at night, so they run a red eye. That's also why when we're looking at long-haul service, we look at winter service, seasonal service, because the temperatures are cooler, more of a guarantee that those aircraft can get out. Other things that aircraft do today, and when we get not today, but when we get into the hot summer months, we'll find some airlines will end up having to leave passengers off the plane, reduce weight, leave cargo off the plane, or even take less fuel, which means they may not make it to their destination without a stop someplace. They may have to stop in Denver or someplace else on the way. They can develop what we call customary one-engine operator procedures by the airlines. Some of these take up to a year to create. They're very, very technical. And some airlines, there's either a cost involved or it's such an egregious procedure they're just not willing to fly it. Okay? And then airlines can choose specific times and the aircraft they use to depart. Just like JetBlue does, but they can also use a higher performing aircraft. Okay? So those are the ways we address it nowadays, and can then possibly address it in the future. And I'll return it back to Mary Lee.
Okay, I know we're running long, but I really felt it was important because I don't think we've talked very much in the community or to RSCVA about our challenges with air service lift. So I think this was an important conversation to have. I wanted to just take a moment to talk about our new airport amenities. In December, we opened the Escape Lounge. It's a common use lounge. If you're a Platinum American Express carrier, if you have a Platinum American Express card, you get in there free. It's $40 if you book ahead, $45 the day of. Colin Smith, Roundabout Grill, is the local chef for the Escape Lounge. We were the 4th Escape Lounge opened in airports. They are really expanding rapidly, but it's been a great new amenity, I think, for our customers. I think it speaks to all the dynamic things, the vitality of what things are going on here in our community. Our board just approved another new offering, Vino Volo. Hopefully some of you have experienced Vino Volo. They're at 33 airports. It is a wine bar, and they offer, the feedback that we've gotten from customers is that they want healthy food. Vino Volo has a lot of salads and kind of tapas menu, and so they are also partnering. This location will be as you come out of security to the top of the escalator. The Vino Volo will be at that location. If you turn the corner to go to the B concourse where Southwest Airlines is, they're going to have a Verde market because wine probably will not be consumed generally in the morning. They're going to be selling coffee. They're going to have Hub Coffee there and have breakfast products also available. But the Verde market will be really selling a lot of Nevada products there. So we're really, really excited. Vino Volo should be opening in November before the holidays, so great new food and beverage offering at the airport. Probably this is our least favorite topic right now is our issues with NDOT. We are all in favor of the Spaghetti Bowl plan, but most of the alternatives and the preferred alternatives for the Spaghetti Bowl project come with the elimination of the flyovers to the airport. That means that they would eliminate the direct freeway access to the airport. This would take us back 30 years. I mean, we're doing a master plan for the next 20 years, and meantime, this plan with NDOT wipes out our direct access to the freeway. So if you can imagine, all those visitors coming to this airport expect to have direct access. We're among the 67th, we're the 67th busiest airport, and we've looked at the top 100 airports. Those that have a freeway close to them have the direct access to the freeway. We are floored by this, and we may be coming back because this is an issue that certainly our board is very, very concerned about, as we should be. If we're doing a master plan for the next 20 years and we don't have direct freeway access, shame on us. So I will tell you that this will be something that we will potentially be back with in front of the RSCVA board to talk about how can you help us. Right now we're trying to get NDOT to tweak their alternatives so that before they go into the have the EIS out on the street, which they expect, I believe, by September, and alternatives that are there keep the direct access to the airport. Again, I think, you know, the surveys that we have of our passengers, that direct freeway access is so important to people coming into our community. They're already confused enough when they pick up a rental car. They need to have that easy access to the freeway. Chairman and board members, thank you very much for the time this morning. And Chairman Lucy, I'll turn them back to you, and if there's any questions
Thank you, Mary Lee.
anybody might
Appreciate
have.
it. This time there are many questions. Mr. Dillig.
Thank you so much for the presentation and the update. I find that just fascinating, and it's really an exciting time for you. I have just one really quick question, given my lack of understanding. When you talk about seat capacity, can you define seat capacity as, and you're always trying to monitor, is that the number of flights in and out, or is it the number
of seats? If it's the cumulative number, so you take all our flights and you look at the number of seats that are available on each of those individual flights, add them up, that's the number of seats that would be available, you know, in the market that day.
So it's certainly impacted when you have the regional flights versus the longer when they use the bigger
Yes.
jets and those kinds of things. Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions for Ms. Mora? Mr. Turbins.
As well, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. Just curious, with the recent Southwest incident, have we had an impact here, and how long do we expect that to occur if we have?
I mean, I think what we've seen is, and this is I guess it was a week ago Tuesday when they had the unfortunate diversion to Philadelphia and unfortunate loss of one life, but they've now inspecting all the engines. We've seen some cancellations, I would say, periodic. I think more so, I haven't seen them as much in the last couple of days, but I think there will be periodic cancellations as they take planes out of service to go into their inspection. So right away, I would say we saw some cancellations, and into this week we've seen. So we're monitoring that, so we are looking at that. I don't say it's been horrendous, but here and there we are seeing some cancellations. But thank you for that question.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Mayor?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to commend you. You have done a fantastic job with the airport. Marilee, I'm telling you, the mayor hears everything, and usually it's all bad and everything's my fault. But the one thing that I get all the time is that how much people love that airport, the access. So I'm really concerned about the NDOT plan. I'll be meeting with them next week. Have they offered any alternatives?
Well, we have a meeting tomorrow. I remain an optimistic and hopeful person. We have a meeting with them tomorrow. And so I think we're still trying to be optimistic that we have actually developed, we have hired a traffic engineer and developed an alternative for them to take a look at, that tweaks their alternative just a slight amount so that access remains. So we're hopeful that in the final, before they go to put the EIS out on the street, because we think that they will keep the airport access and the alternatives. We're very concerned because right now they're telling us that they won't look at any other options until after the EIS, and we think that it will be a total afterthought and probably not make it. Again, we don't want to slow down the Spaghetti Bowl project. This is an important project for our community. We just want to make sure that an economic engine like the airport keeps that access for our visitors. And the 2,500 people that work at the airport are very concerned about this, I can tell you.
Anyway, I just want to commend
Thank you.
I mean, it has been remarkable what you've done. And you only touched a little bit on what you do in the community. And every week you guys are doing something. And I also want to say, Nat, fantastic job. You have been such a champion over there for us. And Rick, unfortunately, is not here today, but we couldn't do it without you and your dedication to the airport. But the airport is so significant. I can't stress it enough. So if there's something that we can do as a board collectively to help you, I think it would be incredibly important. So. Well, on the NDOT issue, we may be asking for that, but I can tell you any of our successes are really because of the partnership with you, Mayor Sheevy, and the City of Reno, and the RSCVA, and all our partners on the Regional Air Service Corporation. All right. Last but not least, you said we're hitting the 4 million passenger mark. First time ever, or since No, first 16? Time since 2008. Oh, 2008. We were over 5 million in the past. Okay. So we're regrowing the passenger numbers that we lost. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Fantastic presentation.
Mr. Caroselli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marilee, and this illustrates to the board why we have the $1.5 million fund for air service assistance that we've now created at the RSCVA, and why we should continue to maintain that. And I think it also illustrates what a great job that Marilee and her staff do at the airport. They do an outstanding job, and I'm proud to be on that board.
Thank you, Mr. Caroselli. Mrs. Mora, I have to concur with all of my fellow board members that the work that you have done at the airport has been phenomenal. I'm excited for the master plan, and being this is the first opportunity I've gotten to see some of the renderings in regards to some of the positions and the replacements of the cargo, and that I'm elated really to see that new cargo area. I think that'll bring a whole new dynamic to the airport. It will tremendously take our airport into that next level and help us here at the RSCVA continuing to attract new visitors and tourists and convention to the space. We constantly are trying to elevate, and you guys have always taken the lead in regards to making sure air service. So I'm thrilled. Now, the question I have in regards to the cargo area, I know that's part of the master plan, but are those, is that relocation, is that set in stone? Or is that still a tentative idea at this point?
Well, that's really the area that, that's on our master plan. That's the area that we would, that we've had actually designated for cargo for quite some time. So this is really what we showed you on that. I don't know if I can go back to it here. No need. Is the layout, but again, we've always said that the driver for having that area is really another entrant for cargo. Right. So that would not be probably the immediate thing that we do. Our most immediate needs will be additional parking and first building a consolidated rental car facility, which will be right across the street from the terminal, which I think, again, and I know Chairman Lucy, we had early on conversations with you, is that really balancing keeping everything close to the terminal, so we're not busing anybody, whether we're not busing anybody to parking, we're keeping it convenient for the people in our community residents, but also all of those people that come here and rent a car. It's right across the street. They're not taking a shuttle to the consolidated rental car facility, which is a little bit of a distance. So we feel like we've gotten a win-win for both the local residents and people that come to our community.
I absolutely agree. What is the growth that we're seeing currently on cargo service? Is that growing steadily?
Well, our growth in cargo last year was only about 1%, but that's because in 2016, we grew like 13% in cargo. So it slowed down a little, it certainly slowed down this last year, but I would say because 2016 was such a phenomenal year.
So maybe our net average over the last 5 years, what, 6-7%, somewhere in there?
I don't know, Dan, if you, that probably sounds right. I mean, I think it's the cargo growth has been more in recent years, and of course, because that is a tribute to everything happening at Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, all the, the e-distribution that's going on in our community and those facilities being here, the manufacturing here, and all of those products that are, being sent out by air.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Mora.
Thank you again for this generous amount of time this morning. Much appreciated.
We appreciate the wealth of information. All right, we are on to item E2, Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority Staff Update. Mr. DeLone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Lee, before you leave, where are you? Thank you for being just a terrific partner. Our staff relies so much on our very cooperative relationship with you and your people, and I know others have said that today, but thank you for all the help you give us every week. So strong. And I hope you booked ICMA this morning. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good morning. To give you an update on our transition with SMG, our professional management company for facilities has enthusiastically begun the transition process, and that process is moving along very, very smoothly. SMG senior executives visited Reno and all of our facilities the week of April 9th, and they conducted informative all-employee meetings with our staff and one-on-one sessions with each of the building managers. The company's food and beverage division, Savor, has also been preparing for the transition too. I think we should take a moment and acknowledge our existing caterer, Levy Restaurants, and publicly thank them wholeheartedly on behalf of the authority and the board of directors for their excellent past work. They've been very professional and have great attention to detail, and they've taken excellent care in the past of all of our customers. And we thank Levy for their professional collaboration, and they've been very, very helpful with the smooth transition to SMG and the F&B division's Savor. SMG executives and other representatives come back for the entire week of April 30th for more advanced work and transition preparation. And if you wish to make a note, the tentative official turnover date to begin SMG guided operations has been identified as on or about June 20, and certainly no later than July 1 as per the agreement. Throughout this process, all of our employees affected by this change, they have been fully engaged with the task at hand, extremely helpful to everyone, and they carry a positive outlook and a positive attitude. We thank them for being the professionals that they are. SMG has begun the interview process for an SMG general manager for all of our 4 facilities here in the city, as well as a Savor general manager. We've been included in that process, and I think should those individuals come forward and accept the transfer to Reno, that you'll be very, very impressed with their credentials. The United States Bowling Congress, the Women's Championships, is here, and it officially begun last Saturday, April 21st. Over 4,000 teams will visit Reno and Sparks, and their attendance represents over 17,000 individuals. We're happy to once again host this prestigious event. And as a sidebar, the plans for our refurbishment with the National Bowling Stadium move forward, and USBC is very, very happy with what they've seen. With the Reno Sparks Convention Center, our refurbishment continues, and we are preparing to install over 30,000 square yards of new carpet, and that installation is identified right now as the first week of June, and completion of that project is identified as August 1st, well in time for the arrival of Interbike in mid-September. New fresh paint schemes are being applied right now as we speak, and along with that, new signage throughout all the public areas. The center will look really good when Interbike rolls in September. Vice President of Sales Mike Larraguetta is on business travel today, hence I'll be reporting on convention sales activity. In compliance with our strategic plan in the convention market segment, our annual goal this fiscal year is to book 260,000 room nights of future convention business through March. 9 months of activity. We are nearly at our annual goal at 252,000 room nights. We will meet our fiscal year end goal of 260, and we will probably surpass the goal. We believe we should end up the fiscal year with bookings equivalent of 300 to 305,000 convention room nights of future business. As we mentioned earlier, this week we have the International City and County Management Association Reno and Sparks for their convention site inspection. That piece of business is 9,500 room nights for October, and I'd like to extend officially the sincere thanks of the authority through you, Chairman Lucy, to our gratitude to County Manager John Slaughter, and through Councilman Lawson to City Manager Steve Driscoll, and through you, Mayor Sheevy, our thanks to City Manager Sabra Newby. These three people have welcomed ICMA to our destination. They've been integral in our plans to book their business, and thank you to all of them. For an update on leisure sales, including our China tourism initiative, Art Jimenez, the department's director, will give you a full briefing in a few minutes. And in governmental relations, you'll find in your packet this morning, you'll hear from our representative, Jesse Wadhams, who's here today, who in consultation with senior staff has formulated a draft form, initial legislative platform for the board's consideration today. That concludes my remarks. Chairman Lucy, we have other agenda items, and we'll chime in as the agenda moves along.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Dillon at this time? Mr. Lawson.
I want to go back to your room nights again. So you 260 goal and 305 is projected ending?
Yes, sir. Since Mr. Larraguetta is not here today, I'll be happy to tell him that that's where he's got to be. So.
That's huge.
Sorry?
That is huge.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
It is.
So next year's 360 goal will be easy.
I don't think the long-range plan calls for that, fortunately.
All right. I just wanted to point that out because you kind of glossed that over. That's a big difference in room nights.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I think, we have upped our sales representatives who work remotely in the region. We used to have 5 folks. Now we have 9, and we reallocated sponsorship money that was going to industry associations and may not have been the best allocation of resources, and we've put that on the ground with more professional salespeople in primary markets, and I think that's going to certainly pay off for us in the long haul.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Any further questions for Mr. Dillon? All right. Ms. Cunningham.
Okay, if I can draw your attention to the corporate scorecard part, I'm just going to talk about a few highlighted areas. First off, the front page is just month over month, I mean, February 18 over February 17. And you'll see our visitor volume, we had a nice increase of 2.7%, which for a February month is significant. Going down just a little bit to the taxable revenue for February of 18 versus last year, we're showing a 10.4% increase, which is, again, significant. It's a result of room nights being up, and ADR enjoyed a very healthy bump of $7.43 for that month. So the numbers are continuing to look good. Real quickly on the marketing update, we're working very closely with EDON on a neat project. We're going to be providing EDON a landing page on our website. When they go out and they promote our destination for job relocation, in addition to attracting new businesses here, they've been kind of hosting a site called whyreno.org. And they came to us and they said, my gosh, your site is fabulous, and we want our potential new businesses and employees to land on your website and really get a better feel for the destination. So what we're doing is right now working on putting a landing page for them, but we've got a media influencer from Seattle coming up this weekend who's partnering with a major media influencer in our destination. And they're going out and doing some video, capturing video and interviewing some entrepreneurs in the area to talk about why they chose to relocate to Reno, what they like about our city. And this effort's pretty cool because it speaks to our brand platform of ambition. So we get to get some assets, creative content on our website for visitors to see, which reinforces that ambition platform, ambition characteristic, and the authenticity. And Edon's tickled that we kind of bounced ideas back and forth for about a year, and it truly had to work for both of us. And I think we've hit on something that will be very unique in terms of a partnership and us supporting them, but them bringing something to the table for our tourism and our tourists and what we are promoting. Last month I mentioned our partnership with Big Truck Hats. We've kind of finalized that, and on May 9th we're launching through social media. We're going to have a big announcement to identify this partnership. Big Truck will be selling our hats online. And equally important, they're going to set up their sew-on stations. Some of you might be familiar. They've had booths at events like Wanderlust. And you go and you'll select your Reno Tahoe logo, and we're working on about 6 different patches. And then you select the type of hat you want, and they sew it on, and it's a real thing, let me tell you. So at the Reno River Festival, they'll have their sew-on site to kick it off, and they plan to be at many of the other events throughout the season to promote their partnership with us and sell these hats. Last of all, I'm really excited to say yesterday we were notified of some awards. We've received additional awards for our marketing campaign. And this one is really impressive, I have to say. It's an international marketing and communication professional association, and it's called the Hermes Award, kind of like Hermes handbags, and it was named after that, as a matter of fact. There were over 6,000 entries from literally around the world. And Reno Tahoe here won a platinum award for our marketing campaign, a platinum award for our new website, and a gold award for what we're doing in this media, social media influencer projects and promotions that we're working on. So I'll bring the awards when I get them. But kudos to the marketing staff and the the executive team for the direction that we're taking this organization. I'm so proud of the work that they've done. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Any questions for Ms. Cunningham in regards to marketing? All right, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Lucy. So speaking of big numbers, February continues to perform very well in the trackable tourism leisure sales side. In February, we had 51,691 room nights reported in this category, and that's 7,200 room nights more than last February. Year to date, we're at 509,000 room nights compared to 438,000 room nights last year at this time. And our goal of 599, we're very confident that we'll hit that goal this year. And that was a pretty aggressive goal going into fiscal year 18. So it continues to perform very well. On the PHG China sector update, we have our first China Ready workshop scheduled for July 10th here in the boardroom, where we'll have representatives from PHG and from China UnionPay giving us a whole workshop on how to proceed with getting China ready for not only for our properties, but also for the Convention Authority and for our activity partners as well. We received yesterday final plans for our website, WeChat, and Weibo platforms that will be fully integrated and built in China. They need to be built in China per law in China, so we've got those plans, and we'll start working on that probably in the next 2 weeks. C-Trip, which is the largest tour operator, the largest OTA in China, larger than Expedia and Booking.com put together, has requested rates for 2019 for a new piece of business. So our properties are submitting their proposals to C-Trip right now. We've confirmed Galaxy Travel and Sea Tour already for 2018, about 10,000 room nights. Now that's not new business, but it's at least it's moving in that direction to increase our goals for China. We're taking advantage of the Reno Event Center and any Asian entertainment that's coming into town. We had 9 customers in town for the Na Ying concert in March, and we have customers coming into town for the Andy Hugh concert. That's going to be May 27th. IPW, which is the largest international tour operator trade show in the United States, will be held in Denver next month, and we have our China office representing us there with already approximately 25 mutual appointments with Chinese tour operators. So everything's trending pretty well in leisure sales on these 2 fronts.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jimenez. All right, Mr. Chisel, do you have anything to add for financials?
Nothing to add beyond what Ms. Cunningham talked about on the scorecard, on the cash room nights, the ADR. The only thing I'd like to highlight is the coming attraction of next month. We will be presenting the budget for the RSCVA for fiscal year 18-19. So be prepared for that and get ready and get your excitement up.
Thank you, Mr. Chisel.
Did we file our tentative budget already?
Mr. Lawson?
Did we file our tentative budget already with the state?
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions now from any of the executive staff? Seeing none, we'll close this item and we'll come back, bring it back to the board. We're on to the item F. F1 is discussion and potential approval of Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority lease extension. Mr. Chisel.
Robert Chisel for the record. As you all know, the authority began renting the space we're in currently back in 2003. There was one lease extension in 2013 that will take the current lease through October 31st, 2018. Before you today is an extension of that lease for an additional 5 years that would take us through October 31st, 2023. We have looked at other space as we looked at renewing the lease. This lease is at a fixed 90 cents per square foot, which is a very competitive. In fact, we'd be hard pressed to find anything even close at that rate. And that rate includes utilities. And as we go forward, we are looking to do the expansion. At that time, we would look at building or preparing facilities over at the convention center to have our administrative offices there. So this would just put us through the next 5 years through that period of time when we can construct the expansion. We did look at the facility as it currently stands to see if there was space for us to move over there. And as you can imagine, there is not space for us over there. So Staff believes it's the best option to extend the lease for another 5 years at 90 cents per square foot, which is the same rate we have currently, so there's no increase.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Caraselli?
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Caraselli, second by Mr. Sterbins. I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Mr. Lawson?
So I want you just to speak about the timing, Mr. DeLone, that we talked about in our meeting, why we're doing the 5-year extension and why there's no out clause in it.
If every indication shows we're going to move forward with an expansion, that expansion would probably open in the around the fourth quarter of 2022, just about 5 years from now. So this lease extension would match up fairly close with the opening of the expansion, and our intent is to build an office area over there along with the expansion.
So it gives us basically 8 months of transition from moving here to move over there to the new
Right.
facility. So
Exactly.
I was comfortable with that. That question came up for me, so I wanted to make sure that that
Yes,
was
sir.
public knowledge.
All right. Any further discussion? So I've got and I share Councilman Lawson's sentiment in regards to continuing to move forward with moving our executive offices. And, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Reno Town Mall individuals for being as accommodating as they've been for so long for our organization. 90 cents a square foot is a very, very nice price for us to be paying for the facility. But I do believe there is quite a bit of benefit in our executives being at the location in which we sell and operate in on a daily basis. Mayor Sheevy and I have experienced that firsthand with the RSCVA and see how beneficial it is to be on site with convention sales and how being in the midst. I feel even though we're across the street, we're still removed. So I think this is a good long-term plan, and I'd like to see that benefit come to fruition in the near future. Without any other further discussion, I have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We're on to item F2, discussion and potential approval of the RSCVA Capital Improvement Plan update. Mr. Chisholm.
Thank you, sir. In June 2016, the board approved the strategic plan for the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority that included a strategic plan for capital in that strategic plan. Staff has been implementing that strategic plan, and as part of the budget development is presenting the attached capital improvement plan for your review and approval. This capital improvement plan will be included, if approved, in the May budget submittal that we're going to have next month for fiscal year 2018-2019. The Finance developed this attached CIP in conjunction with our facilities and other departments and the executive team to look at all the projects we have out there. The needs of the projects were based on a number of criteria. First and foremost, of course, is health, safety, and the legal concerns. Second, value of the project to prolong the life of the asset. Third, the benefit of the project will provide to the authority in support of the goals. And finally, the potential of the project to generate revenue, savings, or increase productivity. As we move forward with facility management with SMG, future project capital improvement plans will include their input and their counsel. The CIP for fiscal year 19 is approximately $4.1 million. Actually, it's $4,127,000. This request, as I stated, will be included in the budget that the board sees in May. One of the things I need to stress in here is that the capital budget will be utilizing the tourism surcharge. This will be the first time we will be doing this. Pursuant to NRS 244A-920 subsection 2, it allows all money collected by a county fair and recreation board from the proceeds of surcharge imposed to be used to implement a strategic plan for the promotion of tourism in the region. The strategic plan would include for the maintenance of public recreational facilities located in the county which are owned by the county or in an incorporated city in the county or under the control of the County Fair and Recreation Board. So the use of the tourism surcharge is allowed, but I wanted to make sure the board was well aware and clear that we would be recommending utilizing $1 million of the tourism surcharge for the capital improvement projects listed in here. If you would all take a look at the CIP plan, the capital improvement plan has a couple of sections in it. Talks about the process, the impacts. It talks about the currently adopted projects that we have going on, and those adopted projects start on page 4 and what the status of them are. We did include the projects that are being undertaken by the City of Reno for the National Bowling Stadium and the Reno Event Center. Even though those monies are coming from the $2 capital surcharge that the City of Reno has, it is not coming from the RSCVA budget. To get a complete picture, it was included in here. Starting on page 7, it talks about the proposed projects for fiscal year 18-19. If you see that's a total projected proposed projects of $4.1 million. Would kind of like to highlight that over the last 10 years, from fiscal year 2008 to fiscal year 2017, the authority has spent on average $986,000 on capital. So we've kind of gotten ourselves behind in maintaining a lot of our assets during that period of time during the recession. This year, the capital project budget was $4.1 million, so this $4.1 million is somewhat consistent to what we are currently seeing in our budget. Of that $4.1 million, $1 million again is coming from the surcharge, $3.1 million from the general fund, and it's basically broken out for $2.4 million for the convention center, and $1.4 million for the Reno Sparks Livestock Event Center. Starting on page 10, it lists the future projects that were not funded. Various reasons, timing, lack of resources, so we tried to prioritize our projects, but thought it would give you a full picture of what projects were not included, and that's broken out by Convention Center and the Livestock Events Center. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Wowa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chisel, thank you for thoroughly going through some of the capital improvement projects that we have lined up for next fiscal year. The one question I did have, and we kind of went over it, and you guys did a really thorough job of determining which projects you guys are going to go after in 2019. Is the contingent $250,000, is that enough for any outlying projects that may come up over time in the next fiscal year, or is there any way that we can equip the staff with extra funding from other areas, general fund, to be able to go after some of the things that come up, because with Interbike coming up and some of the other projects, just want to ensure that you don't have to continue to come to the board to ask for funds to be able to improve those matters.
Thank you for the question. To be honest, we don't know what the future will hold, so we kind of guessed at a number, looking at what happens when, for instance, we lose a boiler, lose a transformer. To be honest, as you all know that have large facilities, anything like that usually is $30,000 to $50,000 without blinking an eye. We kind of looked at what projects are out there and just, to be honest, took a swag at it to try to come up with a number. Is it enough? We don't know. We're hoping it's too much and that we won't have to use it, but we wanted to have it available so when we build the budget is a full budget that we would look at as expending for the year, so we're not having to come back all the time for the board. I would state that having the approval to do it, the budget, having the money in the budget doesn't mean approval to do the project. if there is a project that's large, of 50,000 over, it will still have to come to the board, unless, of course, it's an emergency, it would come after the emergency, it would come to the board. So it still comes to the board, it's just building the budget as we develop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wowo. Mr. Caroselli.
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Caroselli. I have a second from Mr. Wowo. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson.
So we talked a little bit about yesterday building our budgets for the future, and we talked about some of the practices of what I've been able to find is 1/2 to 2% of the value of the building is go into capital each year. Did we come up with a total value of our buildings in the last couple of days?
Yes. Robert Chisel again. Yes and no. Yes, and we did come up with some numbers. I'm not sure I would put much weight in them. The book value for the convention center, that means what the assets were that were put on at the time. So an addition or that was built in the 70s was booked at that cost. The net book value of the convention center is $138 million. The net book value of the Livestock Event Center is $16 million. Again, those are, being that a lot of those facilities are very old, I'm not sure I'd put much weight in the net book value. We did try to look at replacement value of those facilities, what it would cost, what the land is as today's value, what the grounds would be to improve them, and construction costs for facilities. And again, those are really wild swags. For the convention center, we came up with about $286 million, and for the Livestock Event Center, $117 million. And again, I wouldn't take those to the bank.
So it fits in with what we were talking about in our 1/2 to 1% to put into capital.
Correct.
For budget purposes, obviously it's going to be a little different as needs arise, but I think for some, we need to look at this as a policy for future, Mr. Chair, to just give staff something to budget for every year from now on. And if there's something special in there, obviously it has to come to the board anyways.
And I'd like to also point out that, you know, we have an excellent team. Trent has been looking very hard at these projects. If you look at some of the items such as the roofing or the lighting, we have questioned all the numbers and the civil engineers that came back and what their proposals were. We didn't just say, oh, okay, it's $2.5 million to do the lighting at the convention center or $5 million to do the lighting at the convention center. We looked at why. Is there a better approach? And Trent did an excellent job of always asking why, and getting these numbers down to what we think is a fairly accurate and low, parsimonious, as I like to say, one of my favorite words, cost.
And the 4.1 million works out perfectly, and they're right at the 1% that we talked about. So I'm very comfortable with the capital expenditures, but I think that's kind of what we look for in the future. Just from the board standpoint, so we don't get in the weeds so much. I don't really care how much asphalt costs. I want to know how much money we're spending though.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Anything further? All right, I have a motion on the floor, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're on to item F3, discussion and potential approval of the agreement with Duncan Golf Management for the management and operation of the Wild Creek Golf Course.
Robert Chisel again for the record. On February 1st, 2018, staff issued an RFP for the management and operation of the Wild Creek Golf Course. This was brought about primarily looking at the transition of Wild Creek, as was board authorized back in December, to Washoe County School District and Washoe County. And as the transition is taking place, a lot of our employees have been seeking other employment, and we've been having some difficulty operating, and so we wanted to make sure that the golf course maintained its operations and continued successfully into the future. So we issued this RFP for the management and operation of the golf course. We fully disclosed the potential that may occur with the transition. We did work with Washoe County and Washoe County's legal counsel and our legal counsel in developing this written agreement. They actually sat on the RFP committee with us and helped draft a lot of the requirements. The agreement will allow Duncan Golf Management to begin operation of Wild Creek on May 1st, 2018. We will help in that transition, so a number of our employees will stay on during that transition potentially as we build through that. Some of the highlights of the agreement are this is a no cost or revenue sharing agreement for the operation of Wild Creek. They keep the revenue that comes in, and they also keep all the expenses that are associated with the operation of Wild Creek, with the exception of the City of Sparks effluent agreement. We will continue to make that payment through the ownership of the Wild Creek. The equipment currently in Wild Creek remains for use by Duncan Golf Management, and the authority does not guarantee the condition of the equipment. Pro Shop inventory equipment will be transferred at cost to Duncan Golf Management, at cost at the time of transition. There is the potential of assignment of the agreement to Washoe County at transition, but that will be between Washoe County and Duncan Golf Management. We'll point out major capital costs will still be the responsibility of Wild Creek. There were no capital costs included in the capital improvement plan, so we don't foresee any, but just want to point out that as owners of the capital, we are still responsible for any of the facility capital. Probably the only thing that at this point that would be watched would be the pumps that are in use at the facility. During the transition, again, we will work to identify and work with our employees for, they have met with our employees already, and they will continue to meet with them. In fact, there's a meeting scheduled for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning if the board approves this agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We have representatives from Duncan Golf Management in the room if you have any questions for them.
Great. Any questions at this time from the board? All right, seeing no questions from the board in regards to the agreement, looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Wowo, second from Mr. Sturbins. All those, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Duncan Golf. All right, we are on to item F4, board review and approval of bid award and contract for RFP 2018-07 to Definitive Flooring Solutions for the removal and disposal of existing floor coverings and the installation of carpet at the Reno Sparks Convention Center. Mr. Chisel.
Staff issued an advertised bid 21807 on March 27th, 2018 for the removal of approximately 30,000 square yards of carpet tile, purchase of the glue vinyl, installation of 26,000 yards of carpet tile, 3,300 yards of broad loom, and the vinyl base. We had two bidders. Definitive Flooring Solutions was a low bidder at $393,000 with a contingency amount of $19,683 added. The total bid comes to $413,350. Staff is recommending award of the bid.
All right, any discussions on this item? Seeing none, looking for a motion. I have a motion from Mr. Dillard, second by Mr. Sturbins. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item F5, board review and approval to purchase 2014 Genie F65 telescoping boom lift from H&E Equipment Services for the amount of $86,000. Mr. Chisel.
Staff is requesting approval to purchase a 2014 Genie S65 boom lift for $86,000. It is a used boom lift, but we feel it's more cost effective to buy a depreciated boom lift as opposed to a new one. It has been properly maintained, and according to NRS 332.146, it authorizes us to purchase a used equipment at a reasonable savings over the cost of like equipment. Recommend approval.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion on this, looking for a motion to approve. I have a motion from Mr. Dillard, second from Mr. Sturbins. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. We are on to item G, G1, Governmental Affairs, discussion and direction by the board regarding draft legislative platform for 2019 legislative session. And I see we have Mr. Wadhams here. Good morning, Mr. Wadhams.
Good morning, Commissioner, board members. As Phil mentioned earlier, I am Jesse Wadhams with the law firm of Fenimore Craig, your government relations consultant. Your staff and I, we put together for your consideration a draft legislative document that is in your packet. This is obviously our policy, our statement, our agenda for the upcoming 2019 legislative session, which is just 283 days away if you're actually keeping score at home. So I won't read this document to you because it is a working draft for your consideration. But it does highlight a couple of items that you guys have been talking about in your recent meetings, things like the potential expansion of the convention center, supporting programs that increase airlift to the region, maintaining revenues that are coming into the RSCVA for promotion of the area, and monitoring local governance issues. It is intended to be flexible because, as all of you guys know, a legislative session tends to be very dynamic. So we may be, on one instance, supporting or opposing or monitoring. So it's very hard to say exactly what we're going to be doing till we see it. Happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Happy to work with you or through you to sort of get this where you want it. But fundamentally, it is your document, your agenda, and your policy for the upcoming session.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wadhams. I appreciate you taking the time to come this morning. You know, obviously this is a very important issue for Reno Tahoe as we move forward and look into the future of this organization and what that means. And obviously we quite often come at the mercy of the state legislators and how we proceed with certain businesses, and it seems that they get to write the playbook and we get to run the game, so to speak. So I would ask that the board chime in and add anything to the legislative report. This is something that I know Mayor Sheeby and Mr. Lawson and myself have been intimately involved in from day one in this, but it definitely does take the involvement of all the board members, and especially those who are industry professionals, to help guide the principles and that we take to the legislature. I already am hearing feedback in regards to the expansion of the convention center. There are those individuals out in the community that don't feel that we need an expansion of our convention center, and I would argue that differently for us to compete in the market that we do, and to continue to entice business to the region. And the one thing that I would point out is that it's not a new tax on local individuals. This would be an increase of room tax on those visiting our areas, who would more than, and we've seen through a majority of the studies that RSCVA has done, that has been well received, and that the current visitors are willing to pay well above what we currently charge. Our ADR, based upon the score sheet that we received today, is roughly around $100. And that fluctuates anywhere from $98 to $102, but it's relatively less than some of our neighboring markets: Las Vegas, San Francisco, Sacramento, Salt Lake City, Denver. Those who we compete with on a day-to-day basis in our convention market have ADRs extremely higher than ours. And so a room tax increase that would provide us to be competitive in a market set with these tier 1 and tier 2 cities would be of great benefit, not only to this organization, but to the secondary and tertiary markets around us. So I would ask that, Mr. Wadhams, that you and your firm start hopefully really grafting that message and carrying forward that message, so that the proper information is being dispelled to those legislators, because very often we see, for us, the individuals, I being the most freshman members of local government, but we deal with this on a daily basis. At the legislature, we have freshman legislators, as you know, that come in very, very new to legislative sessions, and there are quite a few of them, and they have 4 months to get up to speed before the end of session to figure things out. And so very often are they very confused about the markets and the issues and how it really impacts. I spoke with a legislator that knew nothing about the issue, but was vehemently a no because it was a tax, but didn't know the issue. And I think if it's properly written out and put forward in our platform, it helps tremendously in those discussions. So I will acquiesce. Mr. Lawson.
I think that's exactly the truth. We as a board have to be on top of this, because if we don't get it in this legislative session, this backs everything up for us 2 years on the expansion or more. And so we have to be very diligent as board members. And I think we need a crafted message that we can all say in the so-called 2-minute elevator speech, where we're all on the same page saying the same thing. I'll give you an example. I was just in Scottsdale, Arizona, stayed in an average hotel room, and it was $185 a night. And I got no break for staying 5 days. So it's a big difference. You know, we have some of the best hotel rooms in America right here in Reno, and we're charging $100 a night for them. So the message is lost in translation. If you do any traveling at all, a $100 hotel room is unheard of, unless it's in a old flea bag motel someplace, and I've stayed in a few of those too. But it's, I think, crafting the message so we're all on the same page is a great idea.
Mr. Dillard.
Just to add to the comments, I think that over the course of the last few months, we've seen several presentations that show the potential impact of the expansion. They show today who we currently compete with and our lack of ability to compete in other areas, and what could the potential be if we were to do the expansion. So I think there was a lot of work that's already been done that we can craft into some kind of a document that can easily be disseminated that makes the financial case easily justifiable for that. I just think, to the point that, that for those folks, it's, when they hear tax, obviously they get a certain reaction, but when they're able to see the economic value of it and then the impact to the community, I think we have a very powerful case that we can easily put together to help support it.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Wowo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I completely agree with the previous comments about getting ahead of the convention's expansion and come with that conversation when it comes to the legislative term. I want to bring it back to the document here, and I really appreciate the fact that we're being proactive in this. Well, approximately, what, 208? What was that?
283.
So yeah, that's actually really good to give us an ability to digest this and kind of put our fingerprint on it. The one that I am a little concerned about is the third bullet down, the opposed to diversion of existing room tax revenue towards other government expenditures. I'm glad that this is the working document, only because of the fact that we will be faced with opportunities, as we just saw this morning with the Airport Authority and NDOT, and what kind of impact or what kind of influence we're going to be able to have on the development of that. Because if NDOT does go forward with stripping away the overpasses to the airport, that's going to impact our visitors pretty significantly. So we may have to have some kind of influence and divert some of our revenue or funds to support some of these initiatives that can come at us. So I'm glad it's a working document. I agree with that statement. As long as it's flexible in how we come to the board and determine how we want to do that when the legislative term comes, then I support it.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Chairman, you know that this can have a lot of different moving parts, and one of the things that I think we talked about before, but I'm not sure that we really understand the magnitude or implementing it, was a legislative committee.
Right.
A lot of boards have them, and they're pretty effective if everyone's on the same page. So as we get closer to session, I think it would be great to work with you putting together a legislative committee for the RSCVA.
Absolutely. I think, obviously, as you guys know, especially as you get further along into the legislative session, time becomes short. We're talking after hours, so a small group that is kind of a core constituency is a great idea.
Right, and I think because what I've seen that happens with the boards that don't have them, then you have other members that are sort of just going down there and shooting from the hip, and the message is not clear, and it's not congruent with what everyone's doing, and then that really can kill your bill. So that's all I recommend. Thank you so much. We're excited to work with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with the mayor. I think that a legislative committee is essential for a unified voice to have a cohesive message. I know even at the county, we're going to try to approach a legislative platform that aligns with the City of Reno and City of Sparks. We've never really tried to do that and accommodate that before, and I think that for the first time we're going to try to do something like that. So I think it just behooves us to go down there as a unified group and have these discussions, because we are all in this together, and we've instead of going down there as individuals and trying to ultimately fight out down there, legislators just turn off to that idea. So if we can identify a key group of people for members of this board to make quick acting decisions on behalf of the board, I think that'd be best for any legislative. Is there any addition, with that being said, is there any additional priorities that we would like to see within the legislative priorities, or the things that the board feels is lacking at this time? Mr. Sturbins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question just on the first item. So my understanding is we have not gotten the feasibility report back yet, and that we definitely benefit from having the full support of the NRA. So, I mean, how does that play into crafting this particular point at this time?
I think the support of the NRA is obviously critical for the expansion project. There is no need to move forward if the NRA does not support it, because it's really for the benefit of those NRA members and the hotel companies represented there. The feasibility study will not be ready until probably the first or second week of June. They've asked for a couple of weeks of an extension, and that we're going to comply, so we have a good report. And then that would be circulated to the board members and to the members of the NRA upon its completion.
So I guess how does that affect this particular timing of this particular draft, or does it?
I don't think it really, I think they work in concert.
So if I understand you correctly, you were saying that we definitely need to get the feasibility study back with positive results and get the support of the NRA to make sure that,
we don't know what the content is right now of the feasibility study, but for the sake of conversation, let's say it does come back favorable, that really then drives this first bullet point.
Understood.
The feasibility study's really the first step, and it's a key step, and then of course from there does the NRA suggest moving forward with the project, because they need to support it as they are the most impacted by it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sturbins. Mr. Lawson?
Jesse, when will we start seeing the bill draft requests come out?
So actually, bill drafts are starting to be turned in by various legislators even now, some of the incumbent ones. I don't recall the deadlines off the top of my head, but we will probably start to see the actual bill draft list within the next, probably, I want to say by August, you start to see a bill draft list that's coming out. Now, as you guys know, those are just basically line items. They don't tell you a lot, but those start to develop. But as Commissioner Lucy noted, these conversations, the process of the legislative process itself is almost a full-time job. We have the 120-day window for action, but it's developing the messages, it's developing the contacts and the relationships, and those bill draft requests, as they start to come out, are also a component of that, because we want to be monitoring, watching, and seeing what folks are talking about.
Which is why we have you. So it's a big
Fair
deal.
enough.
And I think this is a perfect document to start with, and I think it is flexible, and we can change it as we need to. But just right off the bat, the one I'm thinking about was the flood control. They wanted to use room tax to do flood control. Obviously, we don't want that as the RSCVA board. So it's good enough for now, I think.
Yeah, no, then, and coming back to Mr. Lola's point, I think the intent of that third point was more about the diversion to other things rather than
They're not tourism driven.
Tourism promotion, and I think NDOT, the RTAA component fits into that completely.
All right, seeing any further discussion at this time? All right, seeing none, I think we've given Mr. Wadhams plenty of direction. Looking for a motion to accept the draft proposal. I have a motion from Madam Mayor. I have a second from Mr. Wowo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, we're on to item H, board member comments regarding any items for future meetings. Is there anything that anybody would like to have on the agenda? Anything that we need to discuss in the future? All right, seeing none. I have no public comment signed in. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on public comment at this time? Anybody? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.